All right, let's talk about methods and arrays. Ah, you thought we were going to get away from methods? You don't get away from anything in programming. You learn something and then you keep using it over and over again until either you remember it by heart or you just fear it so much that you hide in a corner. So, let's get to it. First off, if we just make a simple array, let's say, int numbers equals, and I don't really have to make it equal to anything, but I'll just go new int, and let's go ahead and make it worth 400 for the purpose of this project. Now you may think, that is a lot of numbers. And yes, it is. We have done some loops that printed these. We're going to do some loops that fill them now with random number generators. So if you remember random number generator, it's that math.random. Let's say I want to fill this array. I can simply say for, int I equals 0, I less than numbers.length, I plus plus. And numbers.length just means this number here. And by the way, that number can be a variable too. So I can just come down here and just plug in that. And this is very useful. Let's say at the beginning of the program, I ask how big does things need to be, and I type in 400, then I can plug it in like this. Now, for this, just everything in an array defaults to 0. So if I were just to print this, you would just see a whole bunch of zeros. But I don't actually have to do that, so I can just go in here and say, I want them to be a different number this time. So I'm going to say numbers I. Very important, sometimes people will put number 0, which means only the first number is going to change. Equals, it's just going to change 400 times. Int math.random times, let's go with 100. That'll be 0 to 99. And then I'll do another one for int I equals, well, y. Not just use what we've already got here. So I'm just going to copy and paste. It's the same exact loop. I'm just going to simply print system out the print line. In this case, array, or in this case, I use array a lot, numbers I. So the first loop is going to assign these values to this. And you're not actually going to see anything. It really just takes a millisecond. The next one will be a print that actually prints all these numbers. And if I want to be a little more specific, I could say, array plus I plus quotes plus, there we go, array 0 equals this. Array 1 equals this. Array 2 equals this. There we go. So you can see the actual location that they're plugging the random numbers into. Boom. There you go. Just like that. Add a little bit more information so you can kind of see it a little more visually. Now, I did say this particular program was about methods. So let's see. I'm going to come up here and make a method that'll do these instead of having to write the code. Let's say I had 20 different arrays and I wanted to fill each one of them. Or let's say I wanted, just to do this over and over and over again. Well, public static. Now, depending on what I want to do here, this can be a void, this can be, an array. I really just want to fill it, so void fill array. Now, if this array right here was a global variable at the top, I wouldn't have to pass it anything. But it's not, it's a local variable. It's only exists here basically, so I'm going to have to pass it an array. Now the array does not have to be the same name as this. So when I come up here, I can just kind of copy and paste this code, or in this case, cut and paste, that I've already got. There we go. Although it's not numbers, it would be array in this case, because I changed the name. And this will work for any array I pass, as long as it's an integer array. So if my array is 1,000, this will still work. All I'll have to do is just say fill array, and then tell it what array I want it to fill, numbers. And guess what? It'll fill the array. Even if I come up here and change this to, 100, it'll fill the array. Because it uses this array.length, it doesn't really matter. I can change this to any size I want, 1,000. And you see, it pretty much displays instantly. Now, of course, if I get up to 10,000, you'll start seeing a little bit of a lag, most likely. Oop. It's a little faster on my computer, but there we go, 100,000. The slower your computer is, the slower this output's going to be. Honestly, the print is actually what takes the longest amount of time. Notice it took me 2 seconds, and almost all 2 of those seconds was printing this. Now, we have a fill. How about a print? Int array. Now, you may ask, if you remember when we were passing variables, I'm making all the changes here, but when I come back and it prints, it still makes those changes. Well, the reason that's the case, there's actually 2 particular ways to pass something. One is pass by value, which is what you see normally when you deal with like a variable. In that case, I have a variable here, int n. I pass a copy up here. It changes the copy, but the original doesn't change. Now, when we're dealing with arrays, we have what's called pass by reference. Now, whenever I create an array, numbers, for example, and we'll just make a little box here so you can kind of see. Doot, doot. It's not going to look perfect, but this is paint. So I have this array. Numbers is the name that points to this object in memory. So effectively, what this means is numbers points to the object. This is a pointer. It's not an actual value. So when I pass numbers, and I end up with this array in my method, it has a pointer value. And that pointer value points to the location of where that array is. So even though it's called array here, it's the same array that numbers is using here. A good example of this would be, let's say I come in here and I say, int p equals numbers, right? What this actually does, and if I were to say, I don't know, I made this too big. Let's make it size 0, right? I'll run it. Oh, not size 0, size 1. There we go. Don't want to break it. 87, 88. But let's say I want to say P0 equals 10,000. So I'm changing P, right? My random number between 0 and 99 is getting plugged in at this fill location. Let's move that below that, actually. Let's take a quick look at this. Take a look. Array 0 equals 10,000. I changed P, and I'm printing in. If I take that out, if I put it back in, so basically what's happening here is this. This int p equals numbers basically does this. P. There. When I say p equals numbers, I'm basically pointing another pointer to that same array. So if I change p, if I change numbers, I'm still changing the same exact thing because it's just going directly to where that is. It's kind of like, you know how some people have nicknames? You know, they're known by this name or that name. It's the same thing. I'm just using the same name to reference the same place, the same object, that sort of thing. And that's just an example of that. P points to numbers array. So changing P changes numbers. Because of the same thing. All right, well, anyway, print array. I'm just going to cut and paste this. End print array. Let's zoom in. And instead of numbers, I called it array. I mean, you can use the same name. It doesn't really matter. It's just another pointer value that points to it, like I showed you a second ago. So I just say down here, print array. And I give it, of course, numbers. And lo and behold, there. So now with a single line, I can fill 1,000, 10,000 items. With a single line, I can print 1,000,000, 10,000, however big it is, items. As long as it's an integer, I can print any array. Now, if I want this to do a double array, obviously I'd have to change this to double. String, that would change the string. Character, that would change the character, but pretty much most of the rest of it would still be the same. The dot length, how this is printed, how this works, it would still be exactly the same. Now there is actually another way to print an array, and that would be, let me just make another method here, void print, I'll just call it print array 2, and I'm going to give it the integer array. It's going to do the same thing, except this time we're going to do something a little different. Let me see, in this case, array dot, let's see, oh, we got a toString, there we go. Oh, come back, dot toString. Oh, wait, I think I messed up. Well, let's find out how badly I messed up, and we'll see. Print array 2 numbers. And notice it gives me the gobbledygook, right? Well, what I can do is not array toString. It would be, okay, I remember what I need to do now. All right, so what toString does, let's say I say array 0 dot toString. Well, actually, it doesn't allow me to do that. Let me see here. Dot clone hash toString. I know I'm malfunctioning something. I'm just not sure what it is. Let's find out. Oops, let's back on up. Now each one of these individually is an integer, and there's not much you can do with that. But I'm pretty sure it's the toString, but I'm malfunctioning something. I just have to recall what it is, actually. Could it be? Let's see. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay. It even tells you me in the warning. Arrays dot toString. There's actually a method that's built in. So I don't use this as much as you can see. So arrays dot toString. And of course the toString works for characters, doubles, floats, booleans, whatever you want. Ta-da. Now this will import something usually automatically at the top. If it doesn't, you kind of have to import java util.arrays. But this does something a little different than the other. And let me just show you what this looks like. As my print prints it going straight down, and I could basically change this to print instead of print line and get it going straight across. This does this. Prints it nice and orderly. Well, let's pick a smaller number for this so you can kind of get an idea. Let's go 10. 10 and then 10 using the arrays toString method. automatically puts a little thing here, puts a little thing there. You can kind of see the whole thing. If I wanted to get the same effect without, doing too much work, I could come up here and just, let's do another one. Public static void print array. I'll just do it this way. We could get the exact same effect, but it would take us a little bit more work, unfortunately. So I could say, for example, use my for loop, make a string. So just to show you what this basically does. And I'm just going to say, let's see, actually we'll start off with this. And I'm going to say a plus equals array I plus comma. And at the end of this for, I'll do the same thing. A plus equals array, or not array, but a closing little guy there. I'll have a comma at the end, but you'll kind of get the idea. And then I just simply have to just print off the string A. So if I do print array 1, print array 1 numbers. And let me make sure that's a print and not a print line on my print statements. Oh no, that's fine. Okay. So I can kind of do the same thing. Probably should add a space there, maybe. Boop. There we go. Although I have a little comma at the end, as you can see, I could probably put a little if statement in there to make sure that doesn't show up. But that's basically the same thing. And in fact, you could do that too if you wanted, if you just wanted to do it more by hand. It does allow you a little bit of flexibility to do different things depending on what the input is. But those are 3 different ways to print your array. We've got, and I'll just roll through it one more time. We've got a fill, which fills it with random numbers. You can change whatever that is. We can even add a little extra option up there for, what we wanted that number to be. We've done that in the random number examples before. I can come down here, and we can print straight down, which is what you see here. You can print across by hand if you want to, which is what we get here. And I got a little bit of an issue, which I could fix if I felt like it. I'm a little too lazy. Or you can just use what's built in the Java. A lot of programming is learning how to use the tools and utilities that are built in. And this is one of the things you can do. It's there, why not use it? Now, of course, the difference between mine is they're all integers. If I wanted to do different things, I'd have to make another method for a double, for a string, for a float, or whatever it happens to be. Then, of course, I got my code here at the bottom. All right, well, if you have any questions or issues, let me know. But that is how you print, fill, and just play around in general and a couple of little tidbits about arrays.